welcome to the start of a brand new weekly reading vlog. Today's vlog is really special to me because in addition to reading a bunch of books, we're also going to be revisiting my trip to New York City where I go book shopping with all of my Booktube best friends. Re-looking at some of this footage has made me really emotional because I had such a great time in New York City and I'm so happy to be sharing with you so many of my memories. So for those of you who don't know, earlier this year, I went to New York City to meet a bunch of my friends. I was specifically meeting Britt from Basically Brit and Sabine from Sabine's Book Nook. Both of their channels will be linked down below. But then while we were there, we were also visiting Soleil from the Little Reader's Corner, Michelle, and also darling Desi was there, which was so exciting and lovely to meet her. We've been friends for a really long time. I think ever since I started YouTube. So meeting her was just so serendipitous. And because I had such a magical and fun experience in New York City, meeting all of my friends, going book shopping and exploring everything that the city had to offer, I really wanted to read a bunch of books that were also set in New York City or in Brooklyn. And so this week I read 4 different books that are set in New York City or Brooklyn. And I'm so excited to start the vlog because I can't wait to share with you all of the bookstores that I fell in love with in New York, as well as to talk about all of the books that I read that are also set in New York. And so having said all that, let's go ahead and jump into day number 1 this week where I start to read The Nest by Cynthia Sweeney. And welcome to day 1 of a new weekly reading vlog where I only read books set in New York or like start to take place in New York. Today's been kind of like a busy day. I didn't record a lot of the beginning because I was doing a lot of admin stuff for my channel and for my Patreon, but I did have the most relaxing and lovely long lunch break. I sat outside. I love my backyard. I wish it was sunnier here because I would spend way more time outside. I have been reading this book all day and I am currently on page 261. So I think I have about 100 pages left of The Nest. This is by Cynthia Sweeney, adult. I think this is considered contemporary fiction. I don't know if this would be considered literary fiction. And it's about a family basically, and they are the Plum family, and they all were supposed to inherit a trust. There are 4 siblings, 2 boys, 2 girls. They're all older now. I think the youngest sibling, I want to say, is about to turn 40, and that is the age when all of them are supposed to inherit this trust. But some stuff happens. They had to loan out the money against their consent. Like the mom did this because one of the siblings named Leo ended up getting into some legal financial stuff. And it's like, it is kind of like the twist of what happens is really sad. It says so in the first chapter, so I don't think it's spoiling it too much, but essentially Leo's life has been kind of like falling apart and he ends up kind of having a little bit of a fling with somebody he picks up at a wedding, and they get into a car accident and now he owes like a large settlement and wipes out the trust. And so now Leo has to try fixing things to bring the family back together, and they all have to figure out how to survive if the trust falls through, because they were all counting on the money in the trust and now they're all kind of screwed. The entire thing takes place in Manhattan and also in Brooklyn, and we're seeing all of the lives of these 4 siblings and how they intermingle, and it kind of shows a lot of like New York, a lot of the publishing world, a lot of writing. Of course, we've got like the classic rich people drama going on with like the inheritance, losing all of the money and trying to figure out a way that they all are not going to be, I guess, without money, because all of them have their own lives and own problems and own debt, and they were all counting on the trust fund money, and now it's gone. So the reason I actually picked up The Nest is because the premise of this sounded very similar to Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson. This is a book that was just released this year, and this is a book that I love. This is, I think, one of my very favorite books of the year so far that I've read, and it is similar in the sense that it follows the lives of 3 siblings. Specifically, it follows a sister-in-law's perspective and then 2 sisters, and how the money that they have inherited through their trust fund kind of has impacted their own lives. The difference though between this particular book and this particular book is that I like this book. No, I think if I were to recommend one, I would recommend this one because I feel like this book did so many things that I really loved. I feel like it was very, very self-aware. I did a great job at presenting these characters as really flawed and kind of like self-centered individuals, but it had a lot of great commentary, I think, on like privilege itself and classism, and it felt very self-aware in like this self-deprecating, humorous kind of a way. And it was also just interesting. Like the drama and the things that happened in this were really, really interesting. I also like that this story switched back and forth between 3 narratives. That seems like a lot, but every single character felt really, really distinct in this particular book to me. But this book is kind of weird because there are 4 siblings and it switches off between all of the perspectives. So it kind of already feels like a lot, but then it goes into way more perspectives. Like one of the siblings, Jack, meets a man named Peter, and they meet just like randomly because Jack is trying to find his brother Leo. We get like a whole perspective from Peter, and then we get a whole perspective from Peter's daughter. We get Melody, who is one of the siblings, like we get her twins' perspectives. We get one of the twins' perspective, then we get the other twins' perspective. And then we get Stephanie, who is dating Leo's perspective. After a while, everyone is like running together, and I don't understand why there's so many perspectives. Like it doesn't feel like there's one plot. It feels like this is almost a collection of short stories following the lives of all these people who live in Manhattan. You would think that that would make it more interesting, but I'm gonna be honest with you, it just doesn't feel as focused. But also, I just don't really care about the characters. Like I'm really, really surprised. These characters were also very self-centered, some of them a little bit narcissistic, but for some reason, the characters in this didn't like annoy me. They were fascinating, interesting, flawed, unique, and they had such great candor and voices, and also such great growth. Like every single character in here grew, and you ended up liking them a lot more. Whereas in this one, I only have 100 pages left, and like I don't feel like any of the characters have grown. I don't like any of the characters in here. I don't like Leo, I don't like his brother, I don't like his sisters. I would say the first book so far, if I'm just being honest, it's just not really holding my attention, and I think it's a lot more boring and slower paced than I initially thought. I am still obviously going to finish this. My goal today is to try to finish this book. Right now though, I think I'm gonna go ahead and get ready because I have some Patreon reading sprints that I have to kind of like prep for a little bit. I think I'm going to be using them to be a little bit more productive and work just a little bit on some work, but then I might try reading in one of the sprints as well to get a little further with this book because I would love to finish this if possible tonight. I think that's it for my update though, so I will catch up with you as soon as I am finished with the book. Good morning, friends. It's the next day, and I did in fact finish The Nest by Cynthia Sweeney. And I would say maybe not my favorite, not the best book to maybe start the vlog out with. I have to say I was actually really disappointed. I was disappointed with basically everything. I was disappointed with the ending. I thought that the plot was really, really slow. I was really, really disappointed specifically in like some of the character development and growth or lack of for one of the main characters. It's weird because sometimes you read these rich people drama books, and even though people are like flawed, it can have really interesting commentary on classism and privilege. I think a great example of this would be Family of Liars, which is the prequel to We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. And I was really hoping for that in this book. I was really hoping to get a little bit of drama, maybe a little tiny bit of commentary, something that was kind of interesting to read and dramatic to read, but ultimately like really satisfying. And I just didn't get that. I found that the characters remained unlikable from start to finish. I really didn't like any of the characters. And like, it's weird because at the end of the book, without giving spoilers, it turns out that no one ends up liking the characters really. Anyone in their lives too. And it's just kind of a shame that the siblings all remained, for me, just so unlikable. I found the plot overall to be kind of boring. I feel like the ending was such a big letdown for me personally. Yeah, I think I'm a little disappointed. I will say, if I had to give it a rating, it would be like a 2 or a 2.5 star. Just a little bit of a letdown, but that's okay because today I am starting to read the next book. Technically, I already started this book. I started it for my reading sprints last night after I finished The Nest, and this is Just Kids by Patti Smith, and I'm really excited to read this one because this is actually my friend Britt's, one of her favorite books, I think, and Britt is one of the people who I was so excited that I got to meet on my New York trip. So when I went to New York, I met 2 of my Booktube friends, Britt from Basically Britt, and then also Sabine from Sabine's Book Nook. And I was so excited to meet them. We've been friends for such a long time. And like, thinking about the trip and thinking about Britt and thinking about Sab, it makes me really, really excited to start this knowing that it's one of Britt's favorites. So Just Kids by Patti Smith is actually a memoir, and we're following poet and artist Patti Smith as she attempts to go to New York and really explore her creativity and become an artist in the late 1960s and 70s. And yeah, I'm really excited to dive more into this today. Today, actually, I'm gonna go and work at a cafe for a little bit. I have to edit a vlog, and then I'm also going to try to read a bunch of this book and then report back. But I feel like this is the perfect segue to actually jump into day 1 and day 2 of my New York trip. It was one of the best trips I've ever had in my whole entire life, and I would give almost anything to relive the very first day that I boarded the plane to meet my friends in New York City.
Wake up 2 p.m. I don't know where we are. Looks like a cheap motel with our clothes on the floor. I don't know how we ended up here. And we've been flying high. Are we going too far? I got no cash left and I'm losing my job over you. But I don't care about that. But I got you close and kinda hoping that one day we'll get the rhythm of it. Yeah, 'cause no one knows if we're just jumping out the window, try to cling on to it. You got me holding on to something I know it can burn me down, but I don't care about it, 'cause I got you close and kinda hoping that one day we'll get the rhythm of it. I've been chasing you like the tail of a dog. I don't get no sleep when we kiss in the dark like we do. I just love the way it feels. Yeah, I know it's bad, but I can't resist. When I look in your eyes, I don't know what is real. All I know is that I could go anywhere, anywhere, as long as you're with me. Oh, I'm drunk and I know it, but I got you close and kinda hoping that one day we'll get the rhythm of it. Yeah, 'cause no one knows if we're just jumping out the window, try to cling on to it. You got me holding
to report that I have indeed finished Just Kids by Patti Smith. And I'm so glad that I read this because I have been wanting to read this particular book for years. Like, I've been wanting to read this one for such a long time. So it was such a great excuse to pick it up, not only for this vlog, but also because it is one of Brit's favorite books of all time. So again, this is a memoir of artist and musician Patti Smith. Really, this is a memoir of her relationship with her dear friend and platonic soulmate, Robert. It kind of chronicles a little bit about how she came to be in New York City and then how she and Robert met. And the entirety of the book is really just exploring their relationship, both the platonic parts of their relationship and also the parts where they were together as a couple. It's really remarkable because her bestie Robert became such a very important artist and photographer in his own right. You can Google his images, you can Google his work. He became such an important part of culture and art in New York City, and so did Patti Smith. Patti Smith is well known for her music and also for her poetry, and it's just so incredible to think that both of these people met when they really didn't have anything. They didn't even have a place to stay. They both became these incredible artists in their own rights. It's a really sad memoir because obviously, like, her friend Robert, he does pass away, and I did read a few articles and interviews with Patti Smith, and she said that this was a very difficult book for her to write because she would remember things about Robert and just sob and have to stop writing for a really long time. So this took years and years for her to write, and you can really feel the love between Patti Smith and her dear friend Robert. And it's just a very, very beautiful exploration of two artists trying to make it in New York City. Don't really read a lot of nonfiction, and I do think that I prefer to read fiction over nonfiction just as like a general reader's preference. So I don't know if I connected to this book at quite the level as maybe Brit did, or maybe somebody else who loves and devours nonfiction would, but it was just such an interesting and really beautiful exploration of their relationship. But also it really was a fun portrayal of them becoming artists at this very iconic time in history, 1969 through the 70s. There were so many fun cameos from so many incredible musicians. Jimi Hendrix was in here. There's just like a lot of really exciting moments where like I recognized the people that she was meeting, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I know their music, or oh my gosh, I've heard of that person. Andy Warhol. I mean, just like a ton of people in here. I don't rate memoirs because I feel like that's weird. It would be so weird for me to be like, she really lived a 5-star life. I think she did live a 5-star life, but just in general, I don't really rate memoirs. I will say though, if you are interested in the time period, in different like perspectives from artists and musicians and things, I think you should read this. It was a very powerful memoir. The next book, I really wanted to have some sort of significance to Brooklyn, because the next day in my New York City trip was going to Brooklyn. My friends really wanted to go to Brooklyn. I think specifically Brit really wanted to go to Brooklyn. She wanted to go to the Brooklyn Bridge. We ended up going to a bookstore called Books Are Magic, which you will see in just a little bit. And while I was at Books Are Magic, I bought 2 books. The very first one is called The Vacationers, and this is actually by the person who owns Books Are Magic. Her name is Emma, and she wrote this book, but she also owns this incredibly beautiful bookstore called Books Are Magic in Brooklyn, and I loved it so much. So I wasn't sure if I should read that book or if I should read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This particular book is supposed to be sort of like a modern day classic. This is the 75th anniversary edition. It's supposed to be really moving and beautiful. And this is also another book that I purchased while I was at Books Are Magic. I could not decide if I should read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn or The Vacationers. And so I ended up asking all of my Patreons during a live sprint, and they voted for The Vacationers. I don't have that book right now because I am currently in the middle of reading it, and I left it at my parents' house. So I can't hold it up, but I am reading it. I did just start reading it, and I'm really enjoying it so so far. The book itself is following a family who is from Manhattan, and they all decide to go on a vacation together. There is a daughter named Sylvia who has just graduated from high school. There's the mom, Franny, then there's the dad, Jim. They go with he's not really an uncle, but he's sort of like an uncle. He is Franny's best friend who's gay, and his name is Charles. Charles brings his partner, Lawrence, and then also Bobby comes, and Bobby is the eldest son, and Bobby brings his current girlfriend, Carmen. And the book itself is sort of like a character study. It's this group of people who all go from Manhattan to a vacation, and they basically are trying to cope with a bunch of things that are going on. Like the family dynamics are really off because there are a ton of different secrets that need to be exposed. And I've just started this book, and so far I think it's really interesting and very fast paced. So I think that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and continue reading the book that I purchased from Books Are Magic. And now let's go book shopping in Brooklyn together. Okay, so I have officially finished The Vacationers by Emma Straub, and I am here to share with you my thoughts. Also, I tried to match this book, but looking at it, I don't think I did. I think they're very different shades of blue. So I know that I've already mentioned what the plot of this book is. Briefly, again, following a family from New York City, Manhattan, they go to an island, and then all of these secrets are revealed. Now, I would say that it says on the back that a bunch of secrets come to life, and really there's only one big secret, and half of the characters, maybe more than half the characters, actually know about the secret going into it, and it's not really as much of a secret to the readers. Like, we find out pretty quickly what's actually going on. I don't think it was super shocking necessarily, but if you're interested in like family dynamics and in character studies, I do feel like it was an interesting plot in general, just to see how everyone was gonna react to certain new things that are happening in the family. I would say that this is a great book for someone who is looking for just a really lighthearted beachy read or something to read like by the pool in the summertime. I thought it was well written. I don't think I was particularly attached to any of the characters. I really need to fall in love with the characters. I want them to be flawed, I want them to be messy, but at the end of the day, I want to like them. While I feel like the characters in here were much more likable than the Nest, I still just didn't love any of the characters. And I don't really know why I'm not connecting to the characters as much. Like, I really didn't connect to the Nest's characters, and I really didn't connect to these characters as much. And so maybe it's just like a me thing at this point. Maybe I'm not interested in reading a contemporary book, but I would say this. I thought that The Vacationers was interesting. I thought that it was a very digestible read. And I think if you were looking for a book to take on vacation with you or like to read on a plane or something, I feel like this is a great option. You'll probably see this in a couple different recommendation videos. I want to be clear, like with my recommendation, that I did not think that this was a bad book. I enjoyed the book. I just wasn't as invested in the characters as I was really hoping to be. That is my review on The Vacationers. So the next book that I think I'm going to read is definitely going to be a fantasy, and that is going to be Olivia Blake's One for My Enemy. So this is an urban fantasy. It's adult. It takes place in New York City, in Manhattan specifically, and it's a Romeo and Juliet retelling. So we're following two families, and the families themselves hate each other, but they're also magical families. They're like families filled with witches with like lots of power, and technically it's kind of like mafia vibes, right? Which is really, really cool. So we've got Romeo and Juliet, we've got mafia vibes, New York City, urban, fantasy. It sounds really, really great. So just for full transparency, I did start this book back last spring, and I got to page, I like marked it here, 104. And I was really, really enjoying the beginning. I think I even like made an Instagram story talking about how much I was loving the relationship dynamics between Sasha and Lev, who are our Romeo and Juliet. But at the time, I decided to kind of put down the book because the more I read the book, the harder it was to kind of keep my attention in the book. And whenever that happens, I actually like to take pauses from books because I never like to force myself to read something that I'm maybe not like vibing with or enjoying as much as I thought at the time. And so because of that, I just didn't want to force myself to finish the book in the spring because I was like, maybe I'm like not in the mood to read a fantasy. So I put the book down. I do think that I'm going to love this book because when I first started reading it, I really enjoyed it. And Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake is definitely going to make the top 10 best books of the year that I've read. I'm really excited to go back into this world and like really see her interpretation of Romeo and Juliet. And I think that this book is the perfect, I guess, book to lead into my last couple of days in New York City, because while this book is filled with magic, my last 2 days in New York City were also filled with magic. Now, I feel like every day that I spent on this trip had so many magical and wonderful moments, but by far, I think my favorite day was probably the next day that you're about to see. We went to Central Park, we went to this lovely restaurant called Tavern on the Green, and we just had food and chatted about life and everything for hours and hours, and it just felt so magical to me. The last 2 days, especially with going to the Plaza Hotel and having tea and going to the museums, it really just felt like a movie, and every single second really was filled with magic. So I guess with that, let's take one last visit to New York City.
Baby ferns uncurling, every living thing.
friends. I am here to wrap up the vlog and give you my review for One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. This did not go as expected. I want to say a couple of things before I review this book. First of all, I loved Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I will also say that if you look up the Goodreads reviews for this book, this has a very, very, very high rating. And so I have no problem saying that this is not a book problem. This is a me problem, okay? Clearly, like lots and lots of people who have read this love this book. I'm gonna be fully transparent with you. I DNF'd the book. So I think I mentioned before that I started reading this book a couple of months ago and I was really interested in it at first, and then as it kind of progressed, I couldn't get into the story. And so I decided to put it down because I didn't want to force myself to read this when I maybe wasn't in the mood. However, this is my second attempt at picking up the book, and I think it's just that like we're not a match. You know, if this was Tinder, this book had everything on paper that I was looking for, but you know, there's just no physical chemistry between us in real life, and that's fine. I DNF'd it at about 69%, maybe at about like 70-ish% of the way. Okay, so there are a couple of reasons why I just really was not vibing with this book. First of all, this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, right? And the thing with Romeo and Juliet that makes it so special is that they are star-crossed lovers, right? They are the types of people where it happens once in a rare lifetime where you find your soulmate. And I think one of the reasons that type of romance is so appealing is because we as readers see that it is so rare. And so we love devouring it. I love devouring stories about star-crossed lovers and about like soulmates and things like that just because it is so rare. However, this book has two pairs of star-crossed lovers. What? I don't know how to explain it, but like the reason Romeo and Juliet was so cutting edge, I guess, or like is so beautiful is because there's just two people who are fighting everything to be together, even though everyone is against them. And you can tell, well, I mean, listen, actually, I feel like Romeo, we don't talk about this enough, but Romeo did kind of jump ship from Rosalind a little bit too quick for me. But anyways, we're gonna shelf that for right now and just say that you root for them because it is so rare. And as the audience of a play, or like as a reader of the script or of a retelling, you're like, yeah, but clearly they have to be together because when do people ever get soulmates like this? Apparently a bunch, because let me tell you, two brothers and two sisters in this book are both basically Romeo and Juliet, like double. And I don't know, if there's two pairs of star-crossed lovers, are they really star-crossed lovers? Or is it just that like they need to get on Tinder and find some less complicated people? Like, I really don't know. I feel like the problem is Romeo and Juliet is a short play, and so it holds your attention for a good amount of time. There's a lot of action, there's a lot of romance, there's a lot of passion, but because Romeo and Juliet as a play is so short and condensed, the romance doesn't feel redundant. It doesn't feel like it's too repetitive, and I think that that's kind of the key when you're writing over the top passion, because otherwise it can feel a little much or a little dramatic. Like Romeo and Juliet is dramatic, but again, like it's so short that it's really digestible. But this is 400 pages of two different couples saying again and again, like, I would burn the world down for you. I love you. No one has ever loved anyone the way I love you. And then like 10 pages later, you read the exact same thing from a second couple and you're like, okay, listen, I am team romance, okay? I am team romance. There's too much romance in here. At the end of the day, I was like, I get it. Like, why don't you guys just like make out? I don't want to read about it. It was just a lot because it was so over the top. I would also say that this book is really repetitive in its plot. It feels like the same things keep happening again and again. Maybe because there's two different couples. After a while, everything just really blended together. And I was like, haven't we already seen this person go through this thing? Oh no, that was the other sister. And it just felt very like tedious, and the plot just wasn't as concise, I think, as it could have been. I do think that this is a me problem and not the book problem, because the book has a very high rating and there are so many content creators who I love who have come on here and said that they loved this book, but this just wasn't for me. So it's a little bit of a sad note to end on. However, I did read 4 books for this vlog, all set in New York City, and these are them right now. So I'll just quickly again go through them. We have The Nest by Cynthia Sweeney, and this is an adult contemporary read. I ended up giving this, I think, like a 1.5 star. Then we have Just Kids by Patti Smith. This is a beautiful memoir that takes place in the 1960s and 70s following artist and poet Patti and her relationship with her best friend and platonic soulmate Robert. Then we have The Vacationers by Emma Straub. This particular book is a little bit of like a family drama, and I think I would give this one maybe like a 3.75-ish, I would say. And then finally we have One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. I don't rate DNF'd books because I don't know how it ends. So there's not going to be a rating for this one in particular, but yes. Once again, these are all of the books that I have read this week. Going to New York City and meeting my friends was maybe one of the best things that I've ever done, and it was absolutely the highlight of this year. I am so lucky because I have had the privilege to meet so many wonderful people from YouTube.com. I cannot believe that I got to meet some of my favorite people in the entire world, my Booktube friends, in person in New York City. The entire thing really just felt like a dream. I'm gonna leave all of their channels down below. I recommend checking all of them out. I just love them so much and I loved meeting them. And I had the time of my life traveling to New York City. I think that's it though. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love all of you so much. If you have made it to this part of the video, please leave me the apple emoji for the big apple, you know? And I would love to know from you, what is your favorite bookstore in the whole entire world? A huge thank you to all of my Patreons for all of your continued support. All of the Ink and Quill Club members' names will be down below in my description. Thank you so much for being the executive producers of every single video that I create. And with that, my loves, I will catch you in the next video. So until next time, book lovers, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book. Bye!
Always think of you when spring comes, like it's something in the air at that time. Don't know why. Always dream of you when spring comes. It's like the heat on my skin takes me back.